I had an FBI agent back in the late 90s. An FBI agent called me from San Diego. I was in Los Angeles, and this guy called me from San Diego, and he said he gave me his name, special agent, somebody from San Diego, and I said, just hold on. I said, I'll call you back, and I hung up. So I called information in San Diego and got FBI's phone number. I call that number and I ask for him, and he comes on the phone. So now I know he is FBI. So I said, okay, now talk to me. And he said, I'm calling you as a social call. It's not business. I just want you to know that the people who work in the FBI, the working class people, we know who you are and what you're doing, and we like what you're doing. We don't have any problem with what you're doing. Many of the people in the FBI like what you're saying. And right now, he said, I just want to let you know your government does not see you as a threat. They don't care what you're talking about the Pope and about religion. They don't care about that. And they don't really see you as a threat because you're not talking about arms and overthrowing the government. So they don't see you as a threat at all. But he said the reason why they don't see you as a threat is because they know people are hearing you, but nobody is listening. But when people begin to listen to you, now we're going to have to look at you again, because now you could be politically dangerous. So as long as we see people are just hearing you like they hear everybody else, it's fine. But if we see people starting to listen to you, then we'll have to take another look at you. And he said, but right now I want to tell you one thing for sure. We in the FBI and your government does not see you as a threat. But if ever you're going to seriously be in trouble, let me tell you who your enemy will be. It's going to be the church. It's most likely going to be the Catholic Church, but it's going to be the church. Christian church will be your enemy, because the Christian church is the biggest organized criminal syndicate in the world, and we know it. The people who are actually running Christianity, both Protestant and Catholic, behind the scenes are the world's best criminals, and we know that. So he says, so when you're messing with the church, you're messing with underworld criminal syndicates. Money, politics, sex, drugs, the whole thing. They're running it, and we know that. So the government, your government doesn't see you as a threat, but you keep messing around with the church and the Pope, they're going to see you as a threat. So I have a young friend who was double dating with another guy, and he called me after a couple of days later. He said, yeah, I went out a couple of nights ago with my girlfriend and we double dated with another couple. And he said, this other guy was a Mossad agent. And he said, so at dinner I asked him if he knew anything about you. And he said, yeah, Israel knows all about Jordan Maxwell. We're painfully well aware of him, yes. However, there's nothing we can do about him, because he doesn't suggest taking up arms, guns, nothing. So he's only talking, so there's not much you can do about it. But he said, but Israel feels that he could be a very serious threat to Israel if he undermines our religion. If he undermines the Jewish religion, that will reflect on Israel politically in the Middle East, and that would be very dangerous. So we're watching him, but there's not much we can do about him right now, because he's not suggesting overthrow of governments or anything. So I just think those little incidents are interesting. I was speaking at a conference in Pasadena, mid-90s. And there was like 600 people in the audience. It was a very big conference at a big hotel in Pasadena. And I was a keynote speaker on Saturday morning. I spoke for 2 hours. And about a week before the conference, Norio Hayakawa, who Bill probably knows, Norio Hayakawa, and Gary Schultz were putting it on, and the name of it was called Need to Know Seminar. And Norio and Harikawa and Gary Schultz put on the best shows. I mean, it was sensational. It was really a really interesting event. They had great speakers, and it was a great event. But Norio and Gary called me about a week before the event and said, we're going to go over to the hotel just to look around. You want to go with us? I said, yeah, sure. So we go over to the hotel, and so Norio says to me, he says, well, what kind of a presentation are you going to do, and what do you need? Do you need a chalkboard or a slide projector or what? And I said, no, I'm not going to do any of that. I said, just give me a table. I want a long table so I can lay all the paperwork out, and I want to be like a teacher, just the chair at the table on the stage, and I just want to talk to the audience. And so Norio said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put a camera behind you, a video camera behind you. We'll have a guy on a bar stool sit behind you, and right here, so that when you pick up a document, they can zoom in on it and everyone can see it in the ballroom, because it'd be closed circuit television. So it worked out good. I did 2 hours that morning, had a great time, and it worked perfect. And so the guy was sitting right behind me with the camera right here. And afterwards, toward the end of the evening, when we were getting ready to leave, the cameraman said, Jordan, would my wife and I would like to have you come over and have dinner with us tonight. We live right here in Pasadena. I said, sure. And so he and I are sitting in the front room. His wife's in the kitchen fixing dinner. And we're just sitting and talking about stuff. And after a little while, she comes out from the kitchen and says to him, she said, have you told him yet? And he said, no, I didn't tell him yet. I wasn't going to tell him till after dinner. And I said, tell me what? And he said, well, I might as well tell you now. He said, I've told this story to so many people. My wife has heard it so many times, but now I'll tell you. He said, when I was like 15 years old, I was back east on the East Coast, and he said I was thumbing my way north to go stay with my cousin for the summer vacation. And I was out the road thumbing my way, and he said an old man in a pickup truck, and he was very old, and he said that pickup truck was as old as he was, and it smelled terrible because he had been smoking cigarettes, cigars, pipes, anything that would burn he had been smoking. And he said it was an old man, a dirty pickup truck, and it smelled terrible. And he said, but the moment I got in the truck, that old man started telling me every single thing about my life. He knew all about my life, my mother's life, my father. He knew there was nothing about my life and my family he did not know, and he was right exactly on. He told me about my girlfriend, about my dad's business, about my mother, and who she was before she got married. He said there was nothing he didn't know. And he said, I was just amazed listening to this old man. And he says, then when he let me out, he said everything he told him, he said, when he let me out, he said, everything I have been telling you was to get your attention and entertain you. Now I'm going to tell you something important. After you're 50 years old, you're going to be on the west coast of this country, after 50. And one morning, you're going to be on a stage with a man sitting at a table with a bunch of papers, and he's going to be speaking to a very large audience. And you're going to be sitting behind him with a camera, but that camera doesn't exist now, but it will then. And you're going to have a special kind of camera. And that camera will allow him you will have the camera right on his shoulder. And when he picks the paper up, that camera will allow people in the audience to see what he's talking about. But that kind of camera doesn't exist now, but it will then. And when you find yourself on the stage with that man sitting at the table talking to the audience, you tell him, I put him there. He's not there by chance. I put him there. so that he doesn't think it was his idea. You tell him that I told you that you would be behind him with the camera, and he's going to be sitting at a table with papers, and that I put him there so that he will know nothing he does is by chance. I put him there. He does what I tell him to do. And he said, so I've told everybody, I've heard this story for years, people I've told, and he said, but it wasn't until this morning when I'm sitting there on the damn stage with you and the camera, and he said, and I was so busy getting things set up, I wasn't thinking about it until you started talking and it hit me. And he said, I looked in the audience at my wife, and she nodded her head, yep, this is him. And she said, and he said, I was shocked. I just turned 50 years old. I'm sitting on the stage with a camera behind you. And he said, you would be sitting at a table with the papers on a table, talking to the audience. And he said, so I have to tell you that I was told, like, 35 years ago, or whatever it was, that I would be sitting with you this morning and that you would be sitting at that table doing what you're doing. And he told me to tell you that that wasn't your idea. So you can think that was your idea, but he told me a long time ago what you were going to be doing that this morning. So I thought, wow, man. So I was visibly shaken, emotionally shaken, and tears came to my eyes. I got up and left. I walked out. He was upstairs. I remember walking down at night, and I took a long walk, and he came out to walk with me. And there were tears in my eyes because I was scared. That was frightening to me. And I said, I don't understand. He said, I don't either. I'm just telling you what the old man said. I don't know how to explain it either. But he told me that you're going to be doing what you were doing, and I would be sitting behind you with a camera. And when that happened, he told me to tell you that wasn't your idea. He put you there this morning. So I thought, well, what a trip.
And clearly that old man wasn't just an old man.
Clearly.
And it fits exactly with the story of the girl's father when you were 19.
Exactly.
He clearly wasn't just the girl's father. He was something completely different.
Totally.
You and I are just guessing here, but maybe they were just taking that form for the purposes of leaving a message. And in both cases, that message seemed to be something that indicated that they knew exactly what you would be doing at a particular time or phase in your life in years to come, which was all part of some orchestrated plan. And it would seem to be a benevolent orchestrated plan.
Yes, because I don't feel fearful and I don't feel frightened, but my gut feeling is, and I totally feel this for sure, that there is a very powerful, unseen force of good, of protection, that has the oversight and the ultimate power. And it's watching all of this chaos, etc., going on the earth, but it is above it. And it can call the shots and at any moment step in and intervene in mankind's affairs. So it's as if like a father watching the kids play. Well, the kids are doing things wrong, and this kid's doing something wrong too, and they're all doing bad things, but he's watching. And when he decides to step in, he'll step in, and everybody's going to know it. But right now he's letting you go and play your games, do whatever you're doing. But I'm watching you. I know what you're doing.
Actually,
and so I get to see.
My interpretation would be a little different. And I just inject this here just as an interesting suggestion. Is that it's more like a referee or an umpire in a ball game who's keeping things fair so that the key participants have got a good chance in the game without being overwhelmed in such a way that
I like your, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that. I think you're right. That kind of sounds right. Making sure that the thing is balanced.
Because I don't believe that the outcome is certain or fixed at all. But I like to think, as you know, we've talked about this privately,
Yeah.
that you and I and tens of thousands of others are here, and we wouldn't have showed up here this lifetime if this game was fixed and the whole thing was going to be predetermined to some sorry ending. I don't believe that at all. I think that we are in with a chance in this game. I think that's why we are here, because it is fun. And every now and then what intervention there is something that keeps that game balanced in such a way that we get a chance to exercise our own responsibility for a good outcome if we're smart enough. And that's my personal take on that.
And
What's your response to that?
You and I have discussed this back and forth, but I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think you're right. That there's some higher force. Well, I know there's a higher force. I know that there's a higher matrix of power. That I know. And I know it's protecting me and others. And I know it has its own agenda. These things I already know for sure.
Tell the story. It's a long story, but it's an absolutely wonderful, staggering story about the experience that you had with
Paul Tice and
Paul
and Ivy.
And Ivy.
Yeah.
Up in the Nevada desert,
Right.
near Area 51,
Yeah.
Rachel, Nevada, the little alien
Right.
in the desert. Do tell that story.
I had a friend, a Mexican friend, who worked at General Motors. He was upper management at General Motors in Los Angeles, and he was getting married, and he lived in Palmdale, which is about 50 miles north of Los Angeles. And so he was getting married, and so he wanted me to be the best man at his wedding. And so the idea was that Saturday morning, we'd get married that night. Saturday morning, I was driving up to stay with him while they were getting ready for the wedding that night. And so I went up to stay with my friend, and while the girls and the girl and her mother and her girlfriends were out shopping and whatever. And so the girls went out to the market. And they came back from the market, and there was an old guy in an old beat-up car following them. And when they got out of the car, he gets out of the car and follows them up to the house. And Carlos and I are sitting out looking at this old guy coming. He says, "Who is this?" I don't know. And so when she comes in, she said, "This man met us in the market." And he said, "I know that you're getting married tonight, and the best man at your wedding is at your home, and I need to talk to him." And she said, "How do you know I'm getting married?" He said, "I already know who you are. I know you're getting married, but the best man at your wedding is at your home, and I need to talk to him." So she said, she obviously didn't see him as a threat. And so I said to him, "Well, that's me, so talk to me." He said, "I've been told to tell you something, that a year and a half from now, you're going to have an extraordinary encounter with your friends from out there. And they sent me to tell you that. And the event is going to happen way out in the desert." And I said, "Well, sometimes I go out in the desert here in California and look for UFOs." And he said, No. This is not going to be in California. It's going to be east of here. And it's going to be way out in the desert. You're going to be way out in the desert. And they will pick the time and the place, not you. But it's going to be a year and a half from now. And they're telling me to tell you that you're going to be driving the car, and that you will have a woman in the front seat and a man in the back seat. And they will see to it that you have a woman in the front and a man in the back. And the reason why is because they want both a woman and a man to be a witness to what's going to happen. But the event is for you, not for them. But they want two witnesses. But they want a woman and a man to be a witness. But it's for you. Your friends are going to show themselves to you. Year and a half. And that's it. He left. And a year and a half later, I was speaking in Mesquite, Nevada, at a big UFO conference for Bob Brown. And that was in Mesquite, which is like 60 miles northeast of Las Vegas. And I had brought with me my lady friend from Hawaii, who was a talk show host from Hawaii, Ivy West, and my publisher friend who was living in San Diego, where I was at the time too, my publisher friend Paul Tice. And so Paul was in the back seat and Ivy's in the front seat, and I'm driving. And we're coming back from Mesquite Sunday morning early, and just as we're getting into Las Vegas, I said, out of nowhere, I said, have either one of you ever been to Area 51? They said, no. You want to go? I said, yeah, let's do it. Well, I had been given an invitation to go to the Little Alien by Joe and Pat Travis, who owned the Little Alien, because they used to hear me on my show. I used to do a radio show, a late night talk show in Las Vegas. And so they would hear me. So they used to call me and say, come up as our guest, come up and visit. And so I never did. But so we decided, okay, we'll go. So I called them and they said, yeah, come on up. So on the way up, it's 135 miles north of Las Vegas in the high desert of Nevada. It's a little Mickey Mouse, and I do mean small, little establishment out there in the middle of nowhere. And it's actually just a big restaurant bar, and then there's about 6 or 8 mobile homes which are rented out the rooms like a motel, but they're little mobile homes. They rent them out like a motel. And then there's a mom and pop grocery store and a little service station, and that's it. You know. And it's called Rachel, Nevada. And so, and across about a mile or so to the mountain, on the other side of the mountain is the military base, Nellis Air Force Test Range, and very highly secret stuff going on out there. So anyway, we're driving up, and so I told Ivy and Paul about the prophecy, and I said, here it is, and exactly a year and a half later, and he said I'd be driving and a woman in the front seat and a man in the back. So I said, don't be surprised if, something happens to us. I don't know. So I'm glad I told them before it happened. So we get up there, and that night we're sitting around at the bar and talking, and so when they were getting ready to close, I asked Joe and Pat, the owners, I said, where did we go to see UFOs? Because it's a very famous place, Area 51 for UFOs. So Joe's with his cold humor, he said, you don't have to go anywhere. They saw you. He said, just sit out here in the car. They'll find you if they want you. And so Pat said, well, if you want to go where all the tourists go back out on the highway. And this is out a highway out in the middle of nowhere. This little Mickey Mouse place out there. And so she said, go back out on the highway and go back toward Vegas, exactly 19 miles. Put it on your speedometer, exactly 19 miles. Because at the 19-mile marker, you will see a big mailbox and a big parking area and a road. Park at the mailbox. And there was one of the flight paths is over the mountain right there. So anything coming in or going out is going to go over your head. So if you're going to see something, most likely that's where it will be. So go back to the mailbox. So we get in the car, I'm driving, a woman in the front seat and a man in the back, and I get out on the highway, and instead of turning right, which he just said, to go south, I turn north. Turn left and go north. Ivy didn't catch it, and Paul didn't catch it. We're just talking, and we didn't realize we're going the wrong way. So we slowed down. Now it was like 11:30, 12 o'clock when we left. When we got out to the 19-mile, we're slowing down. And then Ivy says, wait a minute, we're going north. She said, go south. So I said, all right, well, why don't we just turn around and go back? We got the room for the night. And we'll go back out tomorrow night and do it right. So she said, okay, so we'll stop. Well, now it's like midnight, and it was totally overcast. You couldn't see nothing, totally overcast. And it was like midnight. And it's 20 miles north of Little Alien, which is 135 miles to start with. Now it's 155 miles out in the middle of nowhere. And so I pulled the car to a stop, and where I stopped, there was a wide dirt road going off into the desert, and it was a well-kept dirt road. And Ivy said, let's go out in the desert. Let's drive out there. And I said, Ivy, you're in the desert. You're not going to see anything out there that you wouldn't see here. And tonight, you're not going to see nothing anyway, because it's totally overcast. I don't want to go out in the desert. And Ivy insisted, and Paul, jumped in and said, let's go out in the desert a little bit. And I said, why? Go out in the desert. So I drive out in the desert, I'm driving out, I go out 2 or 3 blocks, and all of a sudden I got this overwhelming feeling that we had done something wrong, and I was legitimately scared that we had done something wrong. And I said, Ivy, I'm getting out of here. I don't know what it is. We didn't see any sign that said stayed out. No, nothing like that. I just felt something was wrong. I stopped the car, I backed it up. And just before I took off, Ivy and Paul jumped on me and said, just stop the car. There's no signs, no bases or anything. Just stop the car, we'll get out for a minute. I said, Ivy, something is wrong, I'm feeling it. I want to get out of here, I'm serious. And she stopped the car. We'll get out for a minute. So I turned the key off. We get out, and when you shut the door and the lights are off, there's no stars, no moon, it's totally overcast, it's pitch black. No light, period. And you have to hold on to the car. I can hear voices, but you can't see anything. And it's a spooky feeling. I've never had that experience before. And in the total darkness, any light you see immediately. And so while I'm we couldn't have been out of the car 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds. And all of a sudden, the cloud opened up, like a little bit of an oval opened up. And you can see stars. Well, the moment it opened up, we all 3 saw it, because there's no light. Any light you see immediately. And Ivy said, look, the clouds are opening. And when she said that, 2 bluish-white disc-shaped things, glowing bluish-white, were absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. They came in when the clouds opened up, but when they came in, they didn't fly in. They kind of floated. They just floated in, and they floated close to the cloud above them so that the light was reflecting on the cloud above them, bluish-white, and they were glowing bluish-white. And as they came in, 2 of them, beautiful saucer-shaped things, very slow, and while we're watching, 5 more came in behind them. Now there's 7 bluish-white discs, and they come over us all of a sudden and stop. I was absolutely frightened. I'd never seen anything as beautiful and awesome and otherworldly than 5 glowing bluish-white disc-shaped things stop over you. And instantly they change. And they would, in a quarter of a second, boom, they all changed positions. I thought, God, how'd they do that? And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 and change again, and locked. And I was shocked. I know what the G-force for moving something that quickly. I mean, like that, and it was locked and stayed in place. And I said to Ivy, I'm getting out of here. I don't know what this is. I don't want to know. I'm scared. I want to get out of here. And I got in the car. I cranked it up, and Ivy and Paul loved it. They said, God, look what they're doing, how beautiful they are, 7 of them. And I said, get in the car, you're going to walk home, I'm leaving. And they got in the car because they knew I was serious. They rolled the window down and looked out as I flipped on the lights and took off. And when I flipped on the lights and took off, Ivy and Paul went totally berserk. Now they're both frightened, and Ivy and Paul are screaming and crying and yelling. Now she's really frightened. Now she's scared. Me, I was already scared. Now I got a woman in the front seat who's going ballistic on me, and I'm already frightened. And I'm screaming at her to shut up. And I'm driving fast. I'm speeding toward the highway, and all I could think of was I don't want to overshoot the highway, and go out on the other side and crash the car. But she's yelling and screaming, and so was Paul. And I stopped the car quickly, and it was very quick, maybe 2 seconds. I just stopped the car and opened up to see what they were screaming about, and those things were right down on us, big, still bluish white, but very big, moving all around. I was frightened to death, and I got shot to the highway, and as soon as I could see the highway coming up, I knew I was going too fast, so I hit the brake and skidded all the way up to the highway. And as I came out the highway, the car skidded sideways. And the moment we hit the highway, all three of us felt totally safe again. All three of us felt it. We're all right now, on the highway. And the saucers had gone, all 7 of them had gone back out into the desert. And I can't remember exactly how they disappeared, but I'm trying to remember, they went back out in the desert because I was so frightened, and I was, with them, and the car lights were on, and we got out of the car, we stood there talking to each other, and they had gone back out into the desert and they're gone. That's it. And my heart was pounding, and I was absolutely frightened. And there was tears in my eyes, and I was legitimately frightened. I've never seen, they not only were able to do things which I would say is unworldly, it's not possible to be done. Humans don't have that kind of technology that I saw, that we saw. And that scared me, because first of all, if it is human technology, then we're about 1,000 years ahead more than you think we are, if we could do this. And if it isn't us, then that means it's somebody else, and that's even scarier. Either way, we're in trouble. And so we stood out on the highway that night, and the emotions were absolutely incredible. She was crying, she was laughing, Paul, we were frightened, it was beautiful, it was awesome, it was scary, it was horrible, it was wonderful, it was just everything. Just blowing emotions. And we were like children who had been frightened. And when we finally decided to go back, I'm driving back slow, and we're shaking. And we go back, and we had already got a motel. We were staying in one of the mobile homes. And when you go into the mobile home, you go in from the middle of the thing. So you walk directly into the mobile home that we were staying into the bathroom. And on both sides of the bathroom are bedrooms. And one bedroom had 2 beds and the other had 1. Well, I'm not about to sleep by myself after this. And Ivy is a woman who could take care of herself. If there's ever going to be a street fight, I'd like Ivy to be with me. And so I said, Ivy, why don't you and I take this room and Paul can have the other rooms? Paul said, okay. So Paul's by himself, and I've got Ivy in my room. And so that night, for about a half hour, 40 minutes, we laid in bed talking. I could hear him in the next room. And we're talking about, what did we see tonight? What the hell was that all about? Was that our technology or somebody else's? Well, all 3 of us knew that was not human. What we saw tonight was not human. So the next morning when I got up, Ivy and Paul had already gotten up and gone to the restaurant to have breakfast. And when I went over there, they're sitting at the table with a bunch of people around talking to them. So I figured they're telling them what happened to us last night. No. Ivy and Paul were talking about the alien that came in the motel last night. An alien came in the motel. I was sleeping. I slept through it. And it happened to Paul. It was in his room. It came to him, not me, and not to Ivy and me. It came in Paul's room. And there's a video out there that Anthony Hilda video Anthony was up at Area 51 one time later on, a few years later, and Paul and I happened to be up there also, and we were telling Anthony about it, so he wanted to videotape the interview. And it's called Alien 51. It's a video put out by Anthony Hilder called Alien 51. And in there is Paul Tice and myself at Area 51 telling the same experience. So you'll hear Paul tell it himself, what happened to him. And Paul did not want to talk about it because it scared him. He was legitimately frightened. This alien came into Paul's bedroom. Paul said he fell asleep. He was sound asleep. And all of a sudden, a light came on over his head and woke him up. And it was a light green light. And he said very light, it wasn't very bright at all, but just enough to woke him up. And it was a light green light. And he said he looked up and it was an alien's face with the big eyes, the normal alien-looking face. But you could see through it. It was a hologram. You could see through the face to the ceiling. And he said then the hologram went down the ceiling and hit the wall and came down till it was even with him sitting in bed. And the alien was now even with him telepathically. Asked Paul, what are you doing here? Who are you and what are you doing here? And Paul says, I could understand it well. I knew exactly what he had asked. And I'm trying to think the answer rather than speak the answer. I'm thinking the answer. And he said, when I started to answer him, he said, all of a sudden that thing went through his memory track. He said, everything that ever happened to me in my life, I saw in an instant. Everything. He said, it was able to download my psyche and my brain to see everything I'd ever done. And he said, I knew I had no control over it. I was just seeing everything in my life going by. And he said, then this alien told me, telepathically said, you're okay, you're all right. And he said, and then it went through the wall. But the other thing he said, while it was talking to him, the room was moving. He said, I could see the door going past the alien. I could see the window going past the alien and the door coming back around. And he says, in my mind, I was seeing the wall circulating, but it was staying where it was and not moving. And he said, when the alien told me, you're all right, you're okay, it backed out and went backwards and went through the wall. Well, Ivy said that she was laying on her left side looking into his room, and she said when she woke up, something woke her up and she saw this glowing green color on his wall. And the moment she woke up and saw that, she said a small, tiny pin light, red little light, came through Paul's room and zipped in and came right over the top of her. And she was paralyzed. She said, I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. This little red thing was sitting over the top of me. And she said, then I saw the light go. It went. That little red light shot back out and followed, and it was gone. And she said, so I got up and went in there and sat with Paul. She said, you were sound asleep. And she said, and so Paul said that this thing had told him, you're okay, you're all right, and it left. And so I'm listening to this, and I said, I didn't see anything. And when I said that, Pat Travis, the owner of the restaurant, she's very knowledgeable about UFO stuff. And Pat said to me, she said, no, they know who you are. They were just playing with your friends. They just play this way. Sometimes they'll do this to people just to scare them. They were playing with your friends. But they know who you are, and they're not playing with you. And so I thought, wow, to have her say something like that. And so, but that's exactly what, the old man had said. So a couple of days later, we left, and I drove Ivy back to the airport in LA. She went back to Hawaii, and Paul and I were living in San Diego, so we drove back. And I was working for a company called Truth Seeker Company in San Diego, and Paul was my publisher. And this all happened in the first week of December of '94. December of '94 is when I had this whole experience out there in the desert with these 7 UFOs and the alien coming into Paul's room. And so the late spring of '95, I was working in San Diego, as I said, rented a Chrysler convertible, and I told no one where I was going. And I drove back up to Area 51 by myself. I didn't tell Paul, told no one, even the people I'm working with. I just took off and went, and I rented a Chrysler convertible, and I drove up there, and I wanted to go back to where I'd had the experience. For some reason, I just wanted to go back. And so I got there, and that afternoon, about 4 o'clock, I drove out north, 19 miles, found the road, and drove back out on the same road. I wasn't going to stay out there when the sun goes down, or when it gets dark. I did want to go out there after the sun goes down, but when it gets dark, I'm not staying out there. And so I sat on the back of my car with my feet in the back seat, and I talked with them. And I said, look, I know you're here, and I know you can hear me. And I also know that you don't have any, you don't wish to harm me, and I know that. If you did, I wouldn't be here. So I know that you don't want to harm me. I want you to understand that I'm willing to do whatever it is I'm supposed to do with my life. If this is some kind of a spiritual experience I'm having, I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever I'm supposed to do. But I have 2 favors I wish to ask of you. 2 things I would ask you. 1, don't take me anywhere. I don't want to be abducted. I don't want to go anywhere. Just leave me alone. And 2, don't frighten me in my bedroom. I don't want to wake up and be frightened in my bedroom. I got a bad heart, been through too much. Just leave me alone and don't take me anywhere. Show me what I'm supposed to do. Tell me what I got to do, and I'm happy to do. Don't take me anywhere or frighten me in my bedroom. And I said, thank you, goodbye, and good luck. And I got in my car, turned around, and went back and spent a couple of nights with Joe and Pat. And then I drove back to San Diego, never told anyone. About 3 or 4 weeks later, Paul Tice calls me and says there's a young lady he heard about down on Coronado Island in San Diego. Coronado, little island off the coast, and take a big bridge going over to it. And he said that she's a past life regressionist. And he said, I heard she's really great. Why don't you make an appointment with her and go see if she's that good? And if she is, then I'll go. And I said, no, if you want to see her, why don't you make the appointment? No, he said, you're much closer to her. You're very close. So you go see her. I said, okay. So I made an appointment. Her name was Karen, K-I-R-I-N, Karen. Karen was a beautiful young girl, but mystical about her. And so I drove over, I made the appointment, I go in, and so she has you take the watch off and your ring off and any metal, and I'm laying on a table like a massage table, and she's lighting candles around me and talking to someone. I thought maybe she's talking to somebody in the kitchen or something. She's talking and lighting candles, and I'm just laying there, and after a few minutes of her talking, and it finally occurred to me, there's nobody in the house but her and I. And so I asked her, I said, Karen, who are you talking to? And she said, oh, I'm sorry. She said, I'm talking to your friends who brought you here. And I said, what do you mean brought me here? Brought me to your house? She said, no. Who brought you to the earth? You've been brought here to do something. They brought you, and I'm talking to your friends who brought you here. And I said, well, since you seem to be on good terms with my friends, why don't you ask them, what the hell am I doing here? Who are my friends? And she says, well, she said, you don't know who brought you here? And I said, no, why would I be asking you? I don't even know what you're talking about. She said, well, they're saying they're Pleiadians. I don't know, but that's what they're telling me. And they're saying that you're from the Pleiades, and they have brought you here to do something, that they have something for you to do. And I said, wow. So I said, well, while you're talking to him, ask him, what is it I'm supposed to be doing here? And she said, they're telling me to tell you, first of all, that you don't, because she's a past life regressionist. She said, they're telling me to tell you, you don't need a past life regression. You need to get this life straight. Don't worry about your past ones. Get this one right. And then she said, and they're telling me that you are brought here to be a channel. They're going to channel messages through you, but not for a long time yet, not now. But ultimately, that's what they're going to do, is they're going to use you as a channel, and they're going to put you into a position where you will be heard by important people. And when that time comes, they will speak through you. And she said, but they're telling me to remind you, you are not an ambassador, you are an emissary. An ambassador speaks for the government he represents. You do not speak for anyone. An emissary merely delivers a message. You're not speaking for anyone. And they're telling me to tell you, to make sure you understand that. So that you're an emissary, not an ambassador. And you will be able to just deliver the message, and the message will come from them, through you. But not now. There will come a time when you will be speaking before important people, and the people who are supposed to know will know who you are. You don't know, but they will know. And when they're listening to you, they will know who you really are. And so she said, so they're telling me to tell you, just get this one right. And then she starts laughing. And I said, what are you laughing about? And she said, they just told me something funny about you. She said, they told me about 4 or 5 weeks ago, you rented a Chrysler convertible and you drove up there and went out on the same road that they saw you the last time, and you didn't want to go out there at night because you were scared, but you went out in the afternoon and you sat with your feet in the back seat. And I was thinking, I never told anyone this. She was exactly right. And she said, and you sat with your feet in the back seat and you said to them that you didn't mind doing what you're supposed to do, but you didn't want to be frightened in your bedroom or abducted. And they thought that was funny. They got a laugh out of that one. And I said, why would they think that's funny? And she said, because if you knew where you have come from and what you look like where you came from, as opposed to what you look like now as a human, you think you would be scared. Wait till you die and go back to where you come from. That's really going to be a shock to you. And she said, so they just thought that was humorous. You don't want to be frightened? Wait till you die. You've got a real trip coming when you go back to who you really were and where you've come from. And she said, but they're telling me to tell you, no one's going to harm you. We've given you something to do, and we have been watching you from day one. And so just remember, we're watching you, and you will do whatever it is we have in mind for you to do. And I thought, wow, man, I've never heard such stuff in my life. It's an incredible story. I don't know. I'm just telling you what happened.
And it all fits together, right?
Yeah, it all kind of...
These accounts all fit together in a way that suggests, I mean, you've got a number of data points here, then, and you put it all together, and it says that you're sent here, that you're widely respected by everyone, up there and down here, that you've got a job to do, that you're being watched, that you're being protected. You don't know what the heck's going on all this time.
I have no idea.
Actually, I think it's really funny myself. And here you are at the ripe old age of nearly 70, and you're still trying to figure it out, and you don't even know whether you've done yet what you've come here to do.
That's exactly right. And the reason why is because I'm not even sure what it is I'm supposed to do to start with. So how would I know if I've done it? I've always known that I have always had this otherworld connection. Even as a child, I went out of body. I had spirit entities coming into my bedroom when I was 6 and 7 years old. I saw things and I went out of my body. That's another experience when I was 8 years old. I went out to a terrible accident, and I was there and saw the accident happen. I came back into my body and told my parents what had happened. The next morning in the newspaper, exactly what I said happened, exactly as I said, because I was there and I saw it. And I was there at the accident and saw all the details of what happened. And the next morning in the newspaper, exactly what I said happened was in the newspaper. And so I've had aliens at my window at night in Florida. When I wake up at night, I'd see this little creature at my window. Because I was a little kid, I pulled my bed up next to the window. And in Florida, it's very hot at night. And so I pull my bed right up next to the window, I have a screen. And because I would like to lay in bed at night, look at the stars, and talk to the spirits. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, and there'd be a little head would move. It would not move so quick I didn't see it, but it would move when I woke up, and I'd see it. And I immediately opened up the screen, and the yard was well lit up from a full moon. My dog was out there, didn't bark at all. And yet I know I saw something move, and I would do it many times. Many times I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd see a little head move quickly. And so, but when I look out, the dog didn't see anything, and there's nothing in the yard. Something was there. So I grew up having otherworld experiences, seeing aliens, having demonic spirits come in my bedroom.
Some people watching this will already have heard you tell the story in the September 2009 Project Camelot interview. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that you could give another abbreviated version of that encounter with your girlfriend's father?
Oh yeah.
Because that fits together so perfectly with these stories you've been telling here. It's kind of nice if it's all in the same bundle.
Yeah, that's fine. In 1959, I was 19 years old, born in 1940, so 59 I was 19, and I ended up in Los Angeles. I had to go to Los Angeles for some reason. So I ended up there. I have no money. I don't know where I am. I'm in a big city. I don't know what I'm doing here. But I was a kid on the run, so here I am in LA. And one morning in North Hollywood, I went in a restaurant in North Hollywood, 1959, and there was the place was full, so there's no room anywhere, except for one seat at the counter. So I took the seat at the counter, and there was a girl sitting next to me. She was probably, I was 19, she was probably like 17 or so, a little younger than I. So we started talking, and come to find out, she only lived a couple blocks from me, and I only lived about 3 blocks in town, and she lived 2 blocks from me. She had walked downtown, and I had walked downtown. So we hung around town for a while, and then we walked home together. And then we started meeting on the Saturdays and Sundays. I'd meet her downtown, and we just hang out together. And then when we walk home, she lived 2 blocks further than me. So I never walked home with her, but she knew where I lived. And one night, it was on a Friday night, it was a very eventful thing that happens. One night, on a Friday night, she knocked on my door about 10 o'clock at night, and she said, "My dad wants to talk to you." And of course, I don't want to talk to anybody's dad. And I said, "I don't want to talk to him. I got nothing to say to him." And she said, "My father is a very important and interesting man. He's got something to tell you. You need to come with me." I said, "Okay." So I went. And as I was walking with her up to the house, he happened by chance to be coming out of the house. And the moment I saw him, the hair raised up on the back of my neck because of the feeling, the involuntary feeling I got was so overwhelming. And I was shocked at the feeling I got from him. With an immediacy, I knew there's something strange about this man. I'm feeling it already. But I love it. It's not fearful. It's a trip. I don't know who this guy is, but I can't get enough of this feeling. And so he made the, "Come on in," and the thing I noticed about him immediately is I've never seen anyone more in control of themselves than him. He knew precisely what he was doing, the way he moved, his mannerisms, his whole demeanor was very strange. So, "Come on in." And I thought, well, I don't know who this is, but I'm feeling something here. So I went in, and we're sitting on the sofa. I'm sitting on one end, he's sitting on the other end of the sofa. My girlfriend is sitting on the floor with her younger sister, about 10 years old. They're sitting on the floor. The mother is in the kitchen or somewhere in the back room, and he's just talking, just small talk, asking me, how do you like your job and how do you like living in California? And my daughter says that you have been very kind to her, and I want to thank you for treating my daughter with respect. And we were talking back and forth, just little stuff. And I was beginning to feel a little bit better about him. He's talking normal human things. So I'm feeling a little bit better, a little bit more at ease. And he knew that. And then he said to me, he said, remember back when you were 8 years old and back in Florida and your dad built a new back porch? Remember the back porch was falling apart and your dad's brother, they built a new back porch at the house? And your dad used green lumber. It smelled funny because it was green lumber. And you remember that when your dad built that back porch? And it shocked me. And I didn't want to show tears in front of my girlfriend, but it was shocking. And I said, yes. And he said, well, did that happen? I said, yes, it did. And he says, and remember one night you were in bed, and you got out of bed and you went out the back porch, remember? And the moon was really bright. And remember how you picked the wood with your finger? You were peeling the wood because it smelled funny at night, the green lumber. And you picked it and were smelling the wood. You remember doing that? And again, I was even more frightened. And I said, yes. And he said, well, did you do that or didn't you? I said, yes, I did. And he said, and what else did you do? You talked to God, didn't you? I said, yes. And he said, what did you say to God? Remember, you looked up at the moon and you talked to God. And I was just looking at him. I was scared. And he said, what did you do? You said to God that you would like to do something important with your life. Isn't that what you said? And I said, yeah, that's what I said. He said, well, that's why you're here. We brought you here to let you do something important with your life. After all, you asked. And so we've decided to give you something important to do. And I said, I don't understand. He says, not important. But you did say that, didn't you? Yes. How would I know that? He said, how did I know all of that? And I said, I don't know how you know that. And he said, I know that because we were there. When you were talking to God, we were there. So you wanted an opportunity to do something, so we're going to give you an opportunity to do something. And I said, who is we? Who are you talking about? He said, that's not important right now. You'll learn later. And he said, but we also, he said, you're very interested in UFOs and aliens and spooky stuff like that, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm very interested. And he said, yeah, I know. We know that. And he said, would you like to see some UFOs tonight? And I said, yes, I'd like to. He said, well, I can do that for you. Come on, I'll show you. So I got up with him, and the two girls got up, and the two girls, myself and the father, the four of us go out in the front lawn, probably about midnight, 1959, and he looks up in the sky and he starts inaudibly talking. You know, he's moving his mouth, he's talking, but you can't hear him. And then he turns to me and he said, they said they'll be here in a couple of minutes. They'll be coming from over here, southeast. They'll be coming here in a couple of minutes. And I said, who? And he said, you'll see. You wanted to see UFOs, right? Yes. Well, just wait, they'll be here. And so I look at my girlfriend and she's looking at me, and the look on her face was, she was saying to me, yeah, I told you my father was an interesting and important man. I told you. And I was looking at her trying to imagine, is this a trick or but how would he know the things about me that he knew? And who is this man that I'm fascinated with? And sure enough, a couple of minutes later, 3 UFOs, disc-shaped things about the size of the full moon in the sky. That's how big they were, not a little light, full moon size. 3 of them come out over in a triangle formation and stopped right over the top of me, right over the top of us. And I'm looking up at this, and the bottoms, they were all 3 identical, making no sound. And they were all 3 circulating like a pie with 6 or slices, and each slice is a different color. But they were vibrant colors, like laser colors, very vibrant, oranges, pinks, and greens, and they were circulating, but not so fast as to blend the colors. And 3 of them, and I'm standing there looking at them, thinking, my God, this is beautiful. And it's such an eerie feeling. It's quiet at night. It's late. I'm standing out here with a man that's blowing my mind, and I'm looking at 3 UFOs, and then he looks up and starts inaudibly talking to them again. And he said, they said that they're leaving now. They're going now. And so they did. They started moving. They went north very slow, until they were out of sight. And I said, what was that? And he said, that's us. And he said, why are you in California? Why did you come here? And I said, I don't know. I have no idea. He said, that's right. We brought you here. You said you wanted to do something for God, didn't you? Yes. Well, then we have brought you here so you can do something for God. And I said, what? Oh, I don't understand what you're talking about. He says, we have something for you to do. And we've been watching you from day one. We've already decided a long time ago, even before you were 8 years old. We've already decided. So we brought you here to start you on your journey, to begin your life for you. We're going to guide your life so that you learn what you're supposed to. You will have all the experiences that we will see to it that you will have, so that one day, he said, what you're going to do for us will not happen till the last part of your life. It's going to be the very last part of your life. But when that day comes, you will know what it is you will have to do. You will know what it is you have to do. Right now, it's not important. You're just going out and live your life. We will see to it that you meet who you're supposed to and learn what you're supposed to. And when it's time, we'll let you know what you need to do. We'll be there. And so I used to go over to his house. That night, he said, to start you on your journey tonight, I'm going to start you on your new journey, where you're going in your life. I'm going to give you a book. The book he gave me was called The Complete Works of Charles Fort, F-O-R-T, Charles Fort. Charles Fort is very well known for his work. He actually wrote 3 books, probably a lot more, but the 3 most important books were put into one big volume now, and so you can get it as a very thick volume called The Complete Works of Charles Fort. And what made his book so interesting, and why the Father gave it to me, is that Charles Fort has documented a thick book on all the strangest things which have happened in the world, which were documented and which have no explanation at all. No one even ventures to even try and answer it. It's just strange stuff that have happened, and no one has any idea how or what it means. And he documents it. But what makes his book so interesting is that he documents everything with every paragraph. Every paragraph has documentation. Where he saw this, where he found this, where he got this information, where he got that information, what page it was on, who wrote the article, and everything. So you can find anything. It's all right there documented, paragraph by paragraph. And the kind of things he found were just so extraordinary, mind-blowing stuff. It's all there. The world is filled with strange things that have happened that nobody has any explanation for. And when he gave me that book, I know he gave it to me because it opened up my mind to the occult world. Occult simply means hidden. And so that book opened my mind at 19 years old because I had already been well involved in the other world knowledge and strange stuff in my childhood. But for the first time, I had it documented, strange stuff that nobody understands how it happened, and it's all documented in one book. And that, I believe he gave me that book to get me started in realizing that the world is far stranger than you imagine. Far, far stranger. I like that one quote of the astronomer, I think it was, who said the universe is not stranger than you imagine. The universe is stranger than you can imagine.
That was the great British astronomer and physicist Sir Arthur Eddington.
Incredible quote. That's exactly right. And when you read Charles Fort's book, you think, wow, this stuff actually happened, you know, and it just defies your imagination as to what all of these incidents. And so to get me interested, he said, let me give you an idea about what's in the book. And it was a big, thick book, and he just opened it up, and just nonchalantly opened it up to a page. I now know that it was not nonchalant. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly how to get my attention. It's otherworldly how he knew my psyche and my spirit to get my attention. And he says, let me read you something. And the first thing he read me was about a city, a little town, a small town in California, mid-California, back in the 1860s, I think, 1870s. And it's happened to that little town 2 or 3 times in that same town on a clear day, and a sunny, clear day with no clouds in the sky, enormous boulders, tons and tons of boulders would fall out of the sky on a clear day. And they had newspaper people there reporting it. The townspeople saw it. But the thing that made it interesting is that the boulders were like, you know, some of them 2 and 3 tons apiece, falling out of a clear blue sky. But they didn't fall at the normal rate of speed. It took all day for them to come down, all day long. They come down slow. And when they hit the ground, they would bury themselves in the ground where they normally would at normal speed, and the dirt would fly out very slow, all in slow motion. And the whole thing was, you could sit and watch it all day long. It was all in slow motion. But when it was when the rock had finally settled, it would be exactly where it would have been normally, and it would be exactly the way, you know, what would have happened normally, but it took all day for it to happen. So it was obviously a time warp, that these things were coming from somewhere out there in a time warp and hitting this little town. It's happened 2 or 3 times to the same town. And it's documented, it really happened.